Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for We Now Hubs Women Empowering Women. Today, I have Jacqui McGinn with me. She's from UK. Hi, Jacqui. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, Jacqui is a hypnotherapist, a Theta Healing instructor, and a Japanese teacher. Wow, that's quite a combination, Jacqui.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get to how you got to doing so many things. Yeah. Uh, but let me start with your childhood. Yeah, you have an interesting childhood. You said you have your mother is Irish and your father is Scottish.
yes, they are. So, yeah, mum's Catholic, Irish, big Catholic family. So there's loads of them, and then dad's like Protestant, Scottish family.
So
So
you
yeah,
grew up in UK.
sorry.
Did you grow up in UK?
Yes. So my mum was born in Ireland, and she moved to England when she was about 7. And
Mm-hmm.
then my dad was born in Scotland, and I don't know how, he must have been in his 20s when he moved to England. And then he met my uncle, and then my mum and dad met. And yeah.
So what was it like growing up with the Irish background and a Scottish background? What was it like?
Well, my dad was pipe major of a bagpiping band.
Okay.
So he was, he was always at band practice. Kind of, well, it seemed like it. So after work, he would either practice or he'd go to practice in London. Um, so mum, when she was younger, she used to Irish dance. So like I took up Irish dancing when I was little, and then I gave up Irish dancing and played the bagpipes. And yeah, so it's quite unusual for Southern England, but it's
Yeah.
so normal for our family that you don't think about
Yeah, that sounds fun.
it.
Okay, so and you are a hypnotherapist.
Yes,
You
yes,
do hypnotherapy, and you're a theta healer and instructor.
yeah, yeah.
So could you tell us a bit more about what's hypnotherapy and what's theta healing, and how do you combine the two?
Okay, so basically, what they both have in common is that you're accessing the subconscious mind, and kind of, as I'm sure you know, at least 95% of what we do each day, the
Mm-hmm.
subconscious is in control of. Because
Yeah.
if you had to consciously think about every little thing that you were doing throughout the day, you'd be exhausted. And it would take so much time and energy that, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, so it's on autopilot, um, which can be good for things that are helpful, but there's a lot of like habits and beliefs and things that get in the way of
Mm-hmm.
um, fulfilling our potential and being who we really are. There
Right.
can be a lot of messages that went in and are stored there.
Mm.
So what hypnotherapy and theta healing can do is kind of go inside and kind of change about those messages, so they're kind of, so the subconscious is kind of working for you and kind of working with who
Okay.
you really are.
Okay, what's the difference? I mean, hypnotherapy is something totally different, right? I'm not very familiar with what theta healing is about. What is theta healing about, actually? I'm sure many viewers don't know what theta healing is about as well.
Yeah, so um the main difference between like hypnotherapy and theta healing is, so theta healing, you have a particular meditation process that you
Okay.
do
Mm-hmm.
where you visualize going up to what we call creator of all that is. So like source energy, God, whatever word works for you. And then
Okay.
from that space, you're kind of requesting healings to happen, mostly with the
Okay.
subconscious mind. There's also kind of, more kind of psychic healing bits that you can do as well. So theta healing's got, like, it's got its own philosophy behind it as
Right.
well, that's kind of
Okay.
represented in the meditation process that you do. And
Mm-hmm.
I
Okay.
found it a really useful map. Lots of it I found really valuable in my own kind of spiritual And really, like, the main thing about theta healing is getting to a place of love, getting to unconditional love, removing, like that Rumi quote, removing all the barriers to love. Hypnotherapy can be perhaps a little bit more mechanical, that you kind of, so theta healing, like, you go up through this meditation process and you're kind of overtly working spiritually. Hypnotherapy, you don't have to work spiritually. You kind of go down to the subconscious and make changes.
So hypnotherapist goes in and theta goes up. So you're combining the up and down.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing yourself go out, but really you're going in. Kind of, I don't know, it's kind of, yeah, it's a bit mind-blowing, but yeah.
Okay. So how did you get attracted to hypnotherapy and theta healing? What made you go into this field? Why were you attracted to it?
So originally, what started, I suppose it all started with a spiritual awakening, which, for most people, it's not pretty. It's usually something quite dramatic and shattering that happens. And for me, it was like a mental breakdown where I wasn't sleeping, stress had piled up so much, and just the dream world and waking world were all kind of mixed up and confused. And then after it finished, it was like, what on earth was that? And I vowed to find out. Originally, I vowed to stop people going through the same, but then I realized that actually a lot of people go through experiences like that, and it's not just me. And I followed all kinds of things. Carl Jung was the first, like the first healer who appeared really through his books to start to make sense of it. Then I got to the Celestine prophecy and really felt there was something in that. And it took quite a few years. And then eventually, theta healing is kind of probably the first modality I trained in. And I went away from it and I came back to it, and I went away from it and I came back to it. And then ironically, it was learning hypnotherapy. Because I kind of like experimented and played about and found different ways of working with the mind. And then when I trained in hypnotherapy, it was like, oh, this is what I've been doing. So I was already doing hypnotherapy before I got formally trained in it. And now kind of like they sit beside each other for me. So, yeah.
And you mentioned spiritual awakening. What do you mean by spiritual awakening? What was it like for you? You said it's traumatic.
Yeah. So pretty much, I mean, I was kind of brought up Catholic, as I've mentioned, mum was Catholic. And I guess I was always left with this confusion because, I would have to go to mass on a Sunday and dad went to band practice on a Sunday. And I found mass so boring. But it's like, why do I have to go to this? And like, because it's all like, oh, you have to go, and like, if you don't go, you can end up in hell. Not that it wasn't kind of but that implication with it. And then just kind of going through school, I loved science, and I loved kind of like that idea of like needing the evidence for it and everything, and I just couldn't. There's already this confusion with why do I have to go to mass and like dad does it, and then kind of like, well, I can't reconcile the science I'm learning with. So I just kind of, and there was no opportunity to ask about it or question it. So I just ended up pretty much atheist. It was like, that's it. Like, you die, there's nothing else. Finished. And then I got a job in Japan right after I graduated university. And through experiencing Japanese spirituality, like Buddhism and Shintoism, I started kind of getting more curious. And so it was like a way for me to connect with a spirituality that's beyond religions. That's kind of, my own connection. So, but, yeah, it was bumpy and traumatizing, and as spiritual awakenings often are.
Okay, I can imagine. And let's come back to Japan. You mentioned Japan right now. So that is quite a leap, right, from UK to Japan. What made you move to Japan?
Oh, well, kind of, I did linguistics at university, which was all about kind of what all languages around the world have in common. And I had thought about doing Japanese alongside my linguistics degree, but I remember my director of studies at the time said, "Oh, Japanese is hard." And, being a lazy student, I was like, "No, I'm not going to bother then." So I chose Norwegian as the language to do. I went to Norway, and ironically, it was in Norway that the idea to go and teach English somewhere came. Originally, I wanted to be a speech and language therapist to use my love of language to help people. But so I went, when I got back to my university, that it was in Norway, talking to my friends, that this idea, like, oh yeah, go and teach somewhere, because to do speech and language therapy, I'd have to do another degree, and I didn't want to go straight into a degree after being in education since I was 5. So I thought, oh yeah, that's perfect. I'll go and teach English somewhere. And then I heard about the Japan Exchange Teaching Program. So it was a government program to get more native speakers into school to raise the spoken level of English. And I was the perfect candidate for that. I was going to go to Japan for 1 or 2 years as a break from study, and then 1 or 2 years turned into over 9 years. So
Okay, that's a long time.
yeah, a long time.
So you are a Japanese teacher as well. You teach Japanese.
Yeah, I like having the teenagers, because we're one early 20s, got a couple of teenagers, and I love, and I have done it in college, but it's just nice to work one-to-one with the ones that really, really, really want to do it. And it's nice because obviously hypnotherapy and healing can get a bit heavy sometimes. So having something more kind of fun and full of interest to balance it out is really nice.
What is your main work as such by profession? You would say you are full-time into hypnotherapy and ThetaHealing, and teaching is a part-time thing.
Main. Yeah,
Right. Okay. And you are involved in this project that is yours. I think it is Pieces to Peace project.
Yes.
Could you please tell us what it is, a bit more about it?
So Pieces to Peace is a name that kind of popped into my head from, I think, about 2014. And I went to a talk by Dr. Robert Holden, which is all about lovability. I was just in this really blissful, loving state. Pieces to Peace came in. I was like, oh, that's so cool. But then, it was always quite vague, and I was always like, well, what is it? What does it mean? And I think it can have so many different meanings. In one sense, it was, that moment of trauma that happened, it was like my mind and my heart were kind of shattered to pieces. So it kind of represents the healing journey. But then there's also this aspect of each of us is made up of so many different pieces and parts and facets. So about kind of, embracing all of them, embracing the whole of your humanity, especially the shadow parts, the parts that we'd rather not look at, that we'd rather kind of, brush under the carpet and pretend they're not there. But when they're infused with love and they're welcomed back into awareness, they're not a problem. It's only when they're kind of shoved under the carpet that they're a problem. And then finally, this idea that kind of there is some kind of bigger plan for humanity that's come through our heart, and that each of us is a vital piece of, and we're here to kind of help each other bring that plan into reality.
Right.
And I think what you're doing with We Now Hub, I think a lot of us are getting it's a very similar kind of plan idea.
Each other and helping in the collective all, assisting in the upliftment of each and every one of us. Right?
And I think it comes to us in ways that work for us. So obviously, like, it's come to you as We Now Hub. The form, it's come to me as Pieces to Piece, and there's other people that are getting the same thing, and they're calling it something different, but essentially it's the same idea of like, we're equal and different, and we're here to help each other. And
but is it, I mean, I'm a little confused. This Pieces to Piece, what exactly is it? Is it a modality? Is it something you're offering? What is Pieces to Piece? Now, let's say, like, what We Now Hub I am doing, it's a YouTube channel, it's a website, and okay, this is what I'm doing. But what is Pieces to Piece?
That's a question that I've been asking, because it's like, I don't know, have you ever read the Elizabeth Gilbert book, Something Magic, Big Magic, where she talks about ideas, that the ideas are like living entities, and they kind of come and find you, and it's like that. And it's like, I've had to go on this kind of healing journey of like spiritual development to kind of catch up with what it is. So I've wondered, like, is it going to be a modality? Is it a program? I think it probably is, like, will end up being multifaceted. At the moment, my idea is that yes, it will be the book, and so kind of telling my story is kind of, laying that foundation for, how that feeling of being shattered to pieces, like, it feels horrible at the time, but it's also like a kind of initiation to being more of who you really are. The shattering is really the shattering of kind of like the you that's kind of stuck in old systems, and being a really small version of
yourself. I'm getting it right, what you're saying is that we are all multi-talented, multifaceted, and we have different parts and pieces of us, which is very unique and different from each of them, and they all coexist within us. So it's very difficult to say I am this or I am this. We are all of that.
Yes.
So you have so many pieces of you. That's why I guess you're finding it difficult to say what exactly Pieces to Piece is, because it's a combination of all the pieces that make you.
Yeah.
So that's what your book is going to be about, I guess. It's all the different facets of you in one book.
And the journey of kind of embracing them all, and especially the ones that are harder to embrace, because we'd rather they weren't there. But hatred and shame and anger, but they're all really important parts of us.
Right? Of course. So, but you are, your specialty is trauma healing. Or inner child healing.
Yeah, more the inner child, I think, and this is like another aspect of it, because I think trauma healing, it needs lots of different people, and it needs lots of different modalities to like really heal it. So I can work with kind of like the mind levels of it with the hypnotherapy and hypnosis, and the energy as well. Still think you need other people to kind of work on the physical body levels of it, because trauma is stored in the body, as I'm sure you know. and the emotional levels of it. So it's like I can help the mind get ready for that kind of work. But yeah, kind of my clients say that it's like they feel held in compassion and they feel heard, and it's like, you know, that kind of space like helps that wounded child come forward. And it's like the wounded child is like the gateway to the heart, you know, the gateway to your vulnerability. And so yeah, that's kind of the essence of my work, really, is kind of, you know, helping that wounded child so that you can access your real heart.
Wounded child. What do you mean by wounded child? What does inner child concept or wounded child mean? You know, I guess a lot of people are not even aware that they have an inner child that is wounded or has gone through any sort of experiences that still affects their life right now, right? So what comes across to you? Who comes to you as you know, inner child? What would be inner child issues like? You know, how do they show up?
Inner child issues often show up in relationships. Like
Okay.
relationship problems are often like the interaction between a parent and a child. So if you think, you know, you're not born as a complete blank slate, but you have expectations that you'll be loved and you'll be looked after. And it's like through your childhood experiences, you build a map of the world around you, and you build a map inside your mind of what you expect relationships to be like, based on the people that are around you, which are, you know, mother, father, siblings, caregivers, foster parents. And so, I mean, but the trouble is, like, most of us have grown up with, we've got so much research now on like the best ways to help a child develop and feel loved, and what's natural and normal and what's not, or what's kind of like out of sync with developmental stages. So we've got a lot more research and understanding now of how best to support children, but previous generations never had access to that, so they were just kind of carrying on the interaction with children and how it had always been done.
Yeah.
And it's like we've got access to more research and information now, and so most, you know, a lot of us, it could be something like pleasing people. It might be like coming from a wounded child that's like, oh, if I could just please, you know, this child inside is still saying like, oh, if I could just please mum and dad enough, I get all the love. All this, you know, or perfectionism, like there's a perfect version of me that, oh, if I could be that perfect version, I'd get all the love and attention I could ever want. You know, that's the kind of way that it can manifest. Or like people in business, in their marketing, because obviously marketing is building relationships, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
Right. That's right.
you know, it can interrupt there, where you kind of have expectations around relationships or romantic relationships, where you maybe like you overreact to something, but it's the tiny child inside you where something similar happened. And
especially with the parent, like when you're growing up, I guess when you have a parent whose attention you want to keep to get, and you're not getting that love or attention, so you tend to get attracted, I think, to people who are similar to that parent.
oh
So
yeah,
entire life you are trying to please that parent, and you
yes.
don't know that that's actually your inner child that's doing that.
Oh yeah, completely. And that, you know, that was like an important aspect of like my own experience with my breakdown, that it 100% was like having this distant male figure 100% resonated with like what me as a child experienced, where, you know, dad was off busy with his band. So it created the perfect experience for me to kind of like relive that pattern, but also to kind of exaggerate it so that it would, it would smash me open.
I get it. Yeah, it becomes a pattern in your life, and you don't even know why this pattern is a recurring pattern in your life.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's not always the inner child, but often it goes back to something in childhood because, like I said, you're building this map of the world based on the experiences that you're having. But often, like something that happened to a 5-year-old, like a 5-year-old are not able to understand what's happening and can often, oh, it's all my fault. Oh God, I'm to blame for all of this really awful stuff happening. And that stays with you until you go in and change it.
And it's also, what about people who come with things like abuse in childhood and things like that? Do you work with that as well, or you don't?
I have done. I have got clients that have experienced abuse, mostly kind of emotional, psychological abuse. And obviously, like, because emotional and psychological abuse is obviously a really extreme way of creating a really warped expectation of who you are, like a warped picture of who you are as, never enough. There's always something wrong with you. You're to blame for everything that's wrong in the world. And someone who's been abused can really internalize those messages. And there's often a lot of shame around that. There's like there's really something drastically wrong with me when it's not true at all. It's something that somebody else said because they weren't facing their own pain or facing up to their own behavior. It was easier to blame a little child than it is to like take responsibility for what they're doing. I mean, abuse is just such an awful topic, isn't it? But
it's so rampant, isn't it?
I know, because I didn't grow up with abuse, and just kind of going into this field, it really opened my eyes to like, oh my God, it's prolific, and it so shouldn't be, and it's so hidden and kind of always like kept out of sight, but hidden in plain sight.
Yeah, exactly. That's the word. You offer your sessions, are they all in person, or do you offer something online as well?
Yeah, mostly I've mostly been working online, because I've got clients in different countries. I've done in-person sessions, but obviously with lockdown and everything, it's kind of more, it's all focused online.
How do you do hypnotherapy online?
Oh, it works. Like, you really can. So you talk someone through, and I suppose kind of like I've got the advantage that I am kind of working kind of empathically, psychically with them, that I can feel the shifts as they're happening, or I can feel like, oh, what's going on there, and get it. So I tend to kind of take people into a trance state and then guide them, tell them, I trust their subconscious that it's going to lead us to where we need to go, and I get them to kind of like show, and I ask questions to kind of guide them through. So it totally works online.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, maybe there are people who are doing this. I'm not sure how it works. Yeah. Now, let's say I have an issue, or I need help. I mean, why would I come to Jacqui? When and why would I come to Jacqui?
Good question. So it tends to be, maybe you've noticed a pattern that you keep experiencing the same kinds of relationships, or relationships are elusive, like they're not coming, and you recognize that you keep just, holding back, or you're feeling trapped, and you're, desperate to like have some kind of liberation. You're feeling hidden when you really want to be seen, like, feeling hidden or invisible, and a sense of disconnect as well. And you want to feel like connected to who you are, and kind of able to feel connected around other people as well. So those are probably like the main symptoms that people have. And then kind of beside that as well is like, I want this to change. Kind of, there's just this inner switch that's flicked. That kind of, I want this to change now. And when that's happened, it's, the kind of results that you can get are, they're can be really beautiful and powerful. And I've experienced this change, and I've got one client at the moment who, I mean, I have to admit, initially when I heard what her condition was, I was like, ooh, no, that's not for me. But when I talked through my experience with my breakdown, it really resonated with her. And actually, she just needed someone who would listen and then use tools to kind of like help her. And she's completely turning her life around, and it's amazing to see.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Usually, how many sessions approximately do people need with you? I know it depends on the situation or the issue at hand, but just generally speaking.
Yeah, I mean, there are people that it can be sorted out in one session, but that's very rare. Especially if there's been a history of abuse. It takes that inner child a long time to build the kind of trust, to make the changes, to kind of get to where they really want to. So with that kind of client, it would be like a more like long-term, let's kind of work for, say, let's start with 3 months, see where we get to, and then kind of check in. I've also I started this kind of Gifts of the Sacred Wound program, which I'm halfway through, and with that one I've kind of set it for 6 months with so like 2 hours a month, so either a 2-hour session or 2 1-hour sessions, with the intention of kind of going into like a wound and just finding the genius in it. What have you learned from it? How has it helped you? As well as using all the techniques to kind of help feel better about it and stop it kind of being something that's a burden, and instead, turning it from a burden into a gift, really. So the intention behind that.
You said that healing the trauma and to find the genius that is hidden below the trauma, under the trauma.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And it's like showing that whatever happened was for the better, or was to bring out the person in you.
To bring out, to like change. So often it's going to be something that's kind of gone on for generations.
Yeah,
you're healing your ancestors as well, and the particular, like, what happens around that time often has teachings and realizations. Like it's often helpful to kind of like, especially if there's something really horrific that's happened, that it's like, okay, why would your soul choose that? You know, what could you
Yeah.
possibly learn? Or is it that, you know, this pattern has just gone on for way too long and it has to stop? You know, and you know, something like abuse, it does have to stop, doesn't it? Because you can't carry on. And abuse, I believe, you know, a lot of it is unhealed trauma. It's unexplored wounds.
That's
And it
right.
takes a lot of courage to look at it and
Acknowledge it.
acknowledge it,
Yes.
and the acceptance that it's not so much the trauma itself that is the problem. It's what your mind has done, what your mind does with it afterwards. That, like,
Right.
mine, you know, locked it away, and then it's kind of hidden and kind of affecting everything.
Right.
But you know, the more you study trauma, the more you realize that we already have like natural ways of dealing with it. Like animals in the wild have natural ways of dealing when they encounter something that's taking them to that edge of life and death. And I think that, you know, that's a big thing with trauma, isn't it? It is about going to that edge of life and death, and it's a very powerful place to be. And it's kind of being able to reconnect with that power inside yourself as well.
Right. And a lot of ancestors are coming up lately, yeah. In a lot of modalities, they're just like boom in your face.
Yeah, yes, yes, yes. And I think kind of like for so many people doing this kind of work, the pandemic has just brought up so much stuff to face and sort out and clear and
And when you are in the hypno session with somebody, do ancestors or anybody else shows up as the root cause of what your client is going through?
uh yeah, they have done. Um you know, and something, you know, so maybe like something that a grandmother says, but then when you kind of look at that it, you know, it was quite destructive at the time, but when you look at that grandmother's life, you start to get the context, and you understand, you know, what was missing in their own life. And so,
Right.
you know, you can develop the compassion. So you're moving out of blaming um blaming family, moving into like the compassion and the understanding for what they went through and the lack of healing that they had, that kind of
Right.
was the cause of maybe being mean or saying really mean things. And yeah, I mean,
The healing is only client based, or do you do the healing even to that aspect of the ancestral line where it's coming from?
I had done it. Yeah, I mean, I suppose kind of like most people, you know, you build up a bunch of tools from, because I think we're all
Right.
addicted to kind of like training in different things, aren't we? But and then you just
Pieces
kind
of
of
peace.
like
Yes. Yeah,
I think
exactly.
many of us like done one modality and just stuck with that modality, like trained in all kinds of stuff. And then, but you bring in different things, don't you? You know, kind of like intuitively, like, oh, okay, well, let's work in this way. And kind of one of the main ways I work is that I get clients to kind of use their imagination, and so the different parts of the mind will turn into different characters. But sometimes it might be that an ancestor comes in, and so they need to talk to that ancestor, or sometimes they'll go to a past life and they need to sort out something in that past life. And yeah, it really is just kind of being really present to what's going on. And then when the subconscious mind chooses a particular path to go down, you just, yeah, I've learned to just like go with it and trust that it knows what it's doing, and I'm there to kind of support and make sure it gets to a resolution. But yeah, there is all this, yeah, there's just so much wisdom inside. It's like the psyche it's trying to get to balance, and when you appreciate that it's trying to get to balance, it will flow with you, it will work with you.
That's right. I mean, this is something we can keep talking about. There's so many layers to what we are talking right now, about the client and the soul knowing and things like that. Yeah, I don't think we have so much time.
Yeah.
So, Jacqui, how can people reach you? I mean, if people want to reach you for your sessions or anything, how do they get in touch with you?
So the best way would be to send me an email. So that Jacqui at jacquimcginn.com. I can send you. Sorry?
Could you spell that, please, for the
Oh, yeah.
people?
Jacqui at, because I've got a really hard name, haven't I? Jacqui at jacquimcginn.com, which is also my website, jacquimcginn.com. So probably checking out my blog, seeing what I put on Facebook would be a way to kind of explore what I do. And I can send, like, I've got free meditations where people can experience a little bit of what I do.
Okay. If I knew we could have had a short meditation, right? I don't think we have enough time for that, do we?
Probably not today. But
I know it's gone on for quite long already. Before we say goodbye, is there anything else you would like to say before we say goodbye to your viewers?
I think it would be kind of like, really the message that just keeps coming through is like, your heart knows what you need, your soul knows what you need, and when you give them space to let them guide you, and it's kind of like moving into the acceptance that nothing lasts forever, and if there's some discomfort, be with it, experience it, and know that, like, love is with you, and you'll get through to the other side.
That's so sweet. That's a beautiful message. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jacqui. Thank you so much for joining me and being a guest on my interview series. It was really nice having you. You're such a warm person, and I have met you in person also, and that was so amazing. So thank you so much, Jacqui. And for my viewers, thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel, We Now Have. And I'll see you again in my next interview. I'm sure my guest is going to be as interesting as Jacqui. So bye, everyone. Bye, Jacqui.
Bye. Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.